thanks for watching. Two of the three major party leaders squared off in this past week in a debate centered around northern issues. Ontario Liberal leader Kathleen Wynne and NDP head Andrew Horwath took part in the Northern Leaders debate in Thunder Bay. PC leader Tim Hudak did not take part in the debate, citing a scheduling conflict. But despite his absence, the debate still provided plenty of political intrigue. Ryan Benazzo reports.
Kathleen Wynne and Andrea Horwath made Ontario political history Monday afternoon. It was the first time two female party leaders met on the same stage during an election campaign. But there was little time for reflection, faced with questions posed from Northern leaders regarding regional energy needs and, of course, the Ring of Fire.
We do need a federal partner to develop the Ring of Fire in the same way that the federal government has worked in the oil sands. But we're going to move ahead with or without, and we've committed $1 billion to make sure that that infrastructure gets built.
New Democrats are committed not only to the $1 billion, but if it takes more than $1 billion, then we're committed to that as well, because the opportunity is magnificent.
That announcement was a first for Horwath and the NDP, whose recently released party platform contains no firm financial commitments to the Ring of Fire. Wynne went as far as to say that she'd consider her premiership a failure if she's unable to deliver what she calls significant progress toward the massive mining development. But when pressed by reporters afterwards on what significant progress might look like, Wynne couldn't provide specific details.
I can't tell you 4 years down the road exactly where we might want to be, but that's certainly something that we'll need to put in place, and I'll need to work with my colleagues to, what would those benchmarks be? But I can tell you the reason we have the 60-day commitment to get the Development Corporation set up is that I want us to move on that next phase, and that next phase is making the investments to get the infrastructure built.
Horwath came out in full attack mode from the onset of the debate.
We have to clean up the corruption at Queen's Park.
She even went after Wynne personally for her supposed role in the Liberal gas plant scandal.
Ms. Wynne was at the center of it. She was a senior cabinet minister. She was a campaign co-chair. She endorsed it all.
She knows that those allegations are not true. They are not true. She knows that they're not true. And I think that it's quite a statement, and quite frankly, it's a bit sad that the leader of the NDP falls back on that when we were here to answer the questions of Northern leaders.
But Horwath insists the Liberal track record speaks for itself.
A government that was wasteful, a government that disrespected their money, a government that was corrupt in the way that they made decisions in their own political interest instead of the interest of Ontarians, and a government, frankly, that was more interested in cover-ups than coming clean.
But that's Dalton McGuinty's regime, not Kathleen Wynne's regime.
Liberals are liberals are liberals.
Rhetoric that's sure to be dialed up even further when all three leaders share the stage for a televised debate on June 3rd.
While his opponents took the podium in northwestern Ontario, Progressive Conservative leader Tim Hudak was in southern Ontario, and he was peppered with questions about not taking part in the northern debate. Hudak spent most of the morning in Peterborough, a community he was in just last week. The PC leader then moved on to an event at a cabinet factory in Thornhill that took place at the exact same time as the Northern Leaders debate. Hudak was asked numerous times why he wasn't in Thunder Bay.
I've heard you profess your undying love and knowledge of the North. I've heard you talk about the Southern Ontario mentality. I've heard you talk about flexibility and schedules. But the debate is going on as we speak during this availability. Why wouldn't Northerners take that as a snub?
I think there's been no leader who's spent more time over the years in Northern Ontario than me, and that's why, Colin, you see in my plan what the Northern leaders have asked for. A repeal of the Far North Act to encourage economic development, a real plan for the Ring of Fire, affordable hydro so we can actually boom instead of shrink when it comes to our forestry and our mining.
Hudak said he wished the schedule of the leaders' debate worked out, but said NOMA didn't have the flexibility. Well, prior to the Northern debate, a Ring of Fire mining company held its own news conference. KWG Resources presented details of their Northern Ontario job creation plan. KWG is an exploration company that has staked a transportation route to the Ring of Fire and wants to build a railway to the mineral deposits. KWG President Frank Smeek says Ontario already has a Northern Development Corporation, and he says the Liberals' pledge of $1 billion is frankly not the way to do it.
I think if we use the Ontario Northland Transportation Commission, modify it ever so slightly, turn it into the Northland Development Corporation, that can go to the capital markets and borrow money at historically low prices. And then you have the discipline of the capital markets and the discipline of business and money that has a price and needs to be paid back. I think that is a vastly preferred mechanism to dipping into our pockets for $1 billion here.
An overview of the proposed bill can be viewed online at northerndevelopmentcorporation.com. Well, 2 people are dead following a vehicle collision in Muttry Township near Dryden on May 25th. Saskatchewan's Adrian Chapadeau was pronounced dead at the scene when his westbound Mustang collided with a tractor-trailer unit. His passenger, 18-year-old Frisco McRae from Quebec, succumbed to his injuries at the Dryden District Hospital. The accident occurred around 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, the last municipality to pass its 2014 budget presented a draft to the public this past week. Dryden has been digging itself out of a financial crisis that has been ballooning taxes and job cuts that consultants say cut into the bone. John Thompson has more.
Over 2 years and 80 job cuts into its financial crisis, Dryden has produced a 2014 draft budget with a surplus. A tax-weary crowd attended a public input session on Tuesday to hear administration detail a 1.5% tax increase that would lever a $214,000 surplus or a 0% increase yielding only $24,000. Chief Administrative Officer Andre Larrabee was hired to resolve the crisis, and he stood behind both options.
We've received numerous email individual coming to the office and explaining that they've had enough increases. So it was understood that we had to present something that was a zero or something. I didn't do it by myself, and it took a long time, but we believe that we got it right.
Having faced upwards of 30% tax increases over the past 3 years, the voice from the floor was unanimous.
I am totally opposed to any tax increase whatsoever.
I've already behaved to the note and so these people. You're doing a great job. Go back and get more money for us.
And I was strongly encourage a 0% increase, although financially I understand the importance of the reserves.
The crisis has long since depleted Dryden's reserves, but last year it pulled itself above water on its $7 million line of credit. Considering the potential for unexpected expenses, Mayor Craig Nuttall insisted a modest tax increase would be the responsible choice.
The bank has told us that they'll charge us approximately 22% interest. I'm not in the business to make money for the banks. I'm in business to make sure we can spend what we have to spend. As I said, you cut the cloth to fit the pattern, and that's what we're doing.
Hours at public services are being impacted with closures on Sundays over the summer at the library and the recreation center. The $10 million debenture on Dryden's public utility has been chipped down to $8 million, and the budget does not include the $5.4 million it owes the Domtar Mill after a decrease in its property assessment. Whichever plan Council chooses on June 7th, Dryden's bootstraps will stay tight into 2015. John Thompson, TBT News.
Fort Frances Council has accepted a long-term infrastructure plan that could raise taxes by 26.5% over the next decade. The asset management plan isn't binding, but the capital infrastructure plan calls for a cumulative tax increase of 2.3% every year for the next decade. That increase would pay for bridges, roads, social housing, water and sewage treatment costs alone. According to provincial estimates, Fort Frances should be spending $81.4 million over the next 5 years not to increase its infrastructure gap. The town has been spending less than a quarter of that figure. Councillor Ken Perry expressed concern with the mill permanently shut down and municipal elections slated for October. The plan could saddle the next council with either constant tax increases or a decade of severe austerity.
There's no way that this town can raise taxes just for these 5 items 2.3% per year. And my concern is that there's an election coming up and maybe all of us will be voted out. I'm hoping not, but maybe all of us will be voted out. So we're going to saddle a new council with the fact that, hey guys, we told the world that you have to raise taxes this year 2.3%, only for the 5 items on the report, plus good luck on the rest of the budget.
Public Sector Digest is the company commissioned to write the plan with Fort Frances administration. It estimates the funding available in 2013 was only 18% of last year's necessary investment. Well, each week we profile candidates running in Thunder Bay Superior North for the upcoming provincial election. This time around, our candidate coming up after the break is Andrew Folds. On this segment of Northwest Newsweek, we begin a series of candidate profiles of the people running in Thunder Bay Superior North for the upcoming provincial election. Andrew Folds is hoping to follow in his father Jim's footsteps and become the riding's MPP. Phil Darlington caught up with the NDP candidate and files this report.
Thunder Bay teacher and city councillor Andrew Folds is running as the new Democrat candidate for Thunder Bay Superior North. He says he's in the race because of his experience and the needs he sees across the riding.
I'm campaigning because I have this sort of deep-seated desire to serve. I'm 41 years old. I'm a father and a husband. I have 3 young children. And I guess, to put it very bluntly, I want to leave this place a better place for them. As a teacher and a counselor, I've seen far too many people that don't have accessibility to education, to healthcare, to recreation, to a good paying job.
Of all the needs he sees, the one he feels most strongly about are jobs. He sees potential for the North for good mining jobs and believes it is an important part of the North's future.
Development, good paying jobs. And it's not just Ring of Fire, it's mining all across the North and opportunities. It's energy, it's accessible healthcare. We're setting records for gridlock in the Thunder Bay Regional. We have long-term care patients in acute care beds. That's not good enough.
Folds' father, Jim Folds, was a New Democrat MPP for the Port Arthur riding for 16 years, so Andrew grew up surrounded by politics. He spent most of his life in Thunder Bay, but can also draw from a lot of other life experience.
I was born and raised in Thunder Bay, but I'm one of those guys that had to leave Thunder Bay. I left Thunder Bay for 7 years, and then I've lived in Southern Ontario. I've lived in the high Arctic as well, and that's where I started off my career as a teacher. I always knew that I wanted to come back to Thunder Bay. I love the North. This is the lifestyle that I want.
Phil Darlington, TBT News.
My Michael Gravel is looking to win yet another term in Thunder Bay Superior North, a riding he has held since 1995. Mike Albanese caught up with the longtime Liberal incumbent to find out just what keeps him going strong.
Michael Gravel has been an MPP for 19 years now, starting in 1995, with re-election wins in 1999, 2003, 2007, and 2011. But it hasn't been an easy run. A recent battle with cancer could have derailed the train, but Gravel attributes his love for his work and the endless support of his constituents for his longevity.
During that period of time when I was going through my cancer treatments, the support that I received from so many people was incredibly uplifting for me, and I think it helped get me through it. And it also gave me a sense of how much I love what I'm doing, because as I began to feel well again, I realized this is the work that I love to do, and it is more of a vocation or a mission to me. I am very committed to what I'm doing.
Gravel says there is only one way to do this job, and that's all in. His goal of adding jobs and prosperity to the north sees his agenda packed with projects, including the Ring of Fire, a proposed gold mine near Geraldton, four-laning the highway, and increasing salaries for personal support workers.
I think my record shows that I work awfully hard. I think the record shows that I've been able to deliver some very positive things in terms of economic development, in terms of social development for the people in Thunder Bay Superior North. We're looking at opportunities once again in the forestry sector that weren't there for a while. I like to think that some of the work that I did has a lot to do with that.
Gravel takes pride in the fact Thunder Bay currently has one of the lowest unemployment rates in Ontario. He says it's just as important to listen to a small group of constituents as it is to listen to the province when deciding the next step.
I've said it before, with work like this, you're doing your best to help as many constituents as you can on a daily basis. I've spoken a lot about jobs and the economy and some of the economic development opportunities we have, but so much of what we do too is about helping individuals with some of the challenges they have on a daily basis.
Mike Albanese, TBT News.
Derek Parks is the riding's progressive conservative candidate. He's making his first run into politics and says he's got the background and life experience to make a difference for the riding. Phil Darlington rounds out our Thunder Bay Superior North coverage with this interview.
Derek Parks has spent his life split between the Northwest and Southern Ontario. He moved down there to find work, but it's because of his move that he wants to make a difference for the people in Thunder Bay and the surrounding communities.
Well, I think my professional experience have put me across Canada developing mineral projects in Labrador and in Manitoba and working on ones in Ontario, and I've been successful in bringing mines into operations, which I think is a key thing for Northern Ontario at this point in time. This opportunity came up to seek this candidacy, and I'd like to be able to come back to Thunder Bay and focus on creating jobs that will benefit the North.
Parks lives with his wife and 2 kids in Cambridge near Kitchener-Waterloo, but he still has strong ties to the city and surrounding community. He was born and raised in the North and has no hesitation to return.
Born at McKellar Hospital, I was raised out in Nalu, and I'm a high school in Thunder Bay at Sir Winston Churchill, and then I went away to pursue a career that wasn't available to me in Thunder Bay, and met my first wife and was unable to get a job in Northern Ontario, so I started my professional career in Southern Ontario. My mom and dad both live here. I have reasons to come back to Thunder Bay multiple times a year, professionally and for personally, and I still have a good network of friends and family to keep in touch with. I actually volunteered. No one sought me out for this position. To the party's surprise, I stuck my head out and said, hey, can I go back home and give this a shot? And they said, would you be willing to? And I said, yeah, I would.
He says ironically, the mining-related work he found in Southern Ontario has him often traveling back up north, and he wants to really fight to get more jobs for the people in Thunder Bay, Superior North.
Oh, it's the mining, it's creating the jobs. I mean, most of the people in my high school class have moved and gone away because they couldn't find work in Thunder Bay, and Thunder Bay is a great place to raise a family, and it'd be nice to be able to come back and create an environment that people don't have to move away.
Phil Darlington, TBT News.
Joseph LeBlanc is carrying the banner for the Green Party of Ontario this time around. Michelle Soufi caught up with him and files this report.
Joseph LeBlanc is running as the Green Party candidate for Thunder Bay Superior North. He's currently working towards his PhD in forest sciences at Lakehead University. And he's also a local food advocate who says there needs to be more of a focus on that part of the region's economy.
About 2009, I've been involved in the food system here and working to address the issues of food insecurity in remote and rural First Nations, as well as providing viable economic opportunities for farmers and forest and freshwater food producers.
LeBlanc says he doesn't expect the Greens to form a government. But if he's elected and there's a minority government, there's a lot he could do for the riding.
To be the sole Green and in that way can introduce legislation that the other parties will have to vote on, right? And have the opportunity to collaborate in best for our region, right? And so really one or two Greens having a seat can hold the sway of power in a minority government, potentially avoid going to costly elections that people really, obviously are not that keen on having if we're going to end up with the same government we had before.
LeBlanc has 3 young boys and says he wants them to have the same opportunities as we do now. And although he admits winning this election will be an uphill battle, he sees the Greens as a party of the future.
I have 3 young children, and for me, if we see growth in the votes that the Greens get in this election and continue to see that growth to the point where when my children are my age, the Greens play a significant role in Northern Ontario and in Ontario as a whole, I'll consider that a success.
Rochelle Sufi, TBT News.
Next week, we'll profile the candidates in Kenora Rainy River and Thunder Bay Atikokan riding. Well, the Hard Rock Mine in Geraldton has come a step closer to reality. I'll tell you why coming up after this short break. The Hard Rock Mine in Geraldton has come a step closer to reality. Premier Gold submitted its formal project description to the federal government last week, starting the environmental permitting process for Hard Rock. The document is a product of exploration and environmental work that has been underway since 2008. Premier estimates 253,000 ounces of gold can be mined annually for the first 8 years of the 15-year life of the open pit mine. Hard Rock will be a legacy project expanding the historic mine site of the same name while it displaces Highway 11 and 2 residential neighborhoods. Premier Gold President Ewan Doney says his company has already received letters of response and intends to hold public meetings in Geraldton.
Local stakeholders to comment on the work that we've submitted so far, and we will implement all those comments into our go-forward strategy here. So there'll be public meetings held. It'll allow people to go into our office in Geraldton, make comments, to write letters to us and or the government, looking to minimize the impact of our project as it moves forward.
Premier has been exploring the site since 2008. Well, a new superintendent is taking leadership over Quetico Provincial Park. As he took on the position, Trevor Gibb called Quetico one of the premier wilderness parks in all of Ontario. The trained geography teacher has managed parks in northeastern Ontario and Killarney. The park he will be taking on is 7 times larger. The park management plan for Quetico has been an ongoing process that has lasted a decade. Bringing it together Atikokan First Nations and provincial ministries to agree on a strategy is one of his top priorities.
The park management plan has been under review for almost 10 years now, and my hope is to sort of steer it to the end of the process and have a product that all stakeholders are happy with, that we can move forward with over the next 20 years to guide park management.
Atikokan has deep roots at the northern gateway to Quetico. The high school there has the longest standing outdoor education program in the province. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.